Good morning. Good morning. It's not really morning where I'm at, but GM. Anyways, what's going on, Bunzi? How you been?
Good morning. Good, good. Um, been loving seeing what's happening with all this pre-fractal um, drama. It's been amazing to see, but with drama comes attention, and we're seeing a lot of activity, a lot of things building, and yeah, getting excited to roll into September.
Yeah, actually, funny you bring that up because I was looking in one of my wallets and I just have all of these runes that were airdropped to me, something like fractal. Uh, so the fractal is supposed to be the BRC20 chain, and all of a sudden I got dozens of fractal runes token airdrops, and I have no idea how they're going to make it all the way to fractal, if they even choose to support runes, which is a big TBD. But yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of things going on in the space, whether it's building on L1 or building on a side chain L2, or obviously building on other chains which are kind of I would say an extension of Bitcoin, like Pups on Solana with RuneMine here. Getting closer, so I don't want to like spill the alpha just yet. But no, I'm excited for the day has finally come. I think. That being said, Rudemine, appreciate you guys coming up here. Yeah, obviously, maybe you guys can give a bit of an intro on yourself. What you guys have done so far. Right now, I think there's only been a single rune that has made it to Solana, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
Yo, yeah, Jeff here from RuneMine. Yeah, so we've been trudging along in many conversations with many runes. There's been a lot of interest from people. We actually had some very exciting things lined up for sooner than now, but obviously the market conditions kind of put everyone on the back foot for a little bit. So yeah, we've got two very exciting launches happening hopefully this week, and in conversations with a bunch of other projects, and then on top of that, we're also we finished developing our Bitcoin L2 bridge, and looking to be deploying that in the very near future. And again, these are going to be kind of bi-directional both ways. So this is also SPL on runes if someone's interested in going that route, but also SPL on Bitcoin layer 2 as well as runes on Bitcoin layer 2. So yeah, loads going on, and lots of interest from people, but I think everyone's just been sitting on the edge of their seat waiting for this market to come back. And I think we're there, man. It's been 6 months of consolidation, but hopefully we get one final flush lower so I can put my next paycheck in, and then I think we're off to the races.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I think we're all waiting for the sign that we are truly back. Obviously the rate cuts at a macro level certainly helped. I guess re-stimulate the interest towards risk assets. But I think we've had a bit of like a run up week, so to speak. When we got excited and kind of happy again, and then as we saw today, all our runes bags are down 10%. So yeah, I'm not sure what's going on there. Yeah, but no, appreciate you guys joining and doing the work behind the scenes related to Pops as well, which is I'm very appreciative of, and I hope that the public can see it very, very soon. So yeah.
Wait. Let's unpack that.
Oh, no.
Whoa. We
We
can't
didn't
just
say nothing.
Wait a second. So you're telling me?
Let's just say there are rune pups on Solana. It's just unless you know the CA, you can't really find it. So we've been testing a few things here and there, just to make sure everything is set up properly. Doing some copy tutorials and everything, so the process is clear cut and seamless. And I think my grand vision of going to SPL to SPL from a BRC20 to a Rune is also very much there at this point.
I
Yeah,
really think
and
like that is the best approach. Is everyone's trying, bringing it to a chain that has the high throughput, all the tools. Like, I'm really excited. Why I need you to tell me more. Rune mine. What you can tell me? Farmers too busy in the fields right now picking Bitcoin. Um, so what is Rune mine again? I was brushing my teeth,
yeah.
just so no one could smell my breath on the space. But yeah, what you're doing something sick.
So, we started very much building in the Runes ecosystem. We saw the need for, good indexes after everything that happened with BRC20, and just kind of really focused on building out the infrastructure that would make Runes, more usable and more user-friendly. But a lot of us have come, we've done the round trip, started at Bitcoin, moved to Ethereum, went to Solana, and then once we saw everything happening back on Bitcoin, we ended up building in Bitcoin again, and specifically Runes for starters. But we took a lot away from the Solana ecosystem whilst we were there, and just seeing like the user metrics, the ease of onboarding people, all of the functionality, all of the tooling, all of the community building, like everything that Solana has going for it actually corresponds a lot with what Runes, and like in the early days of what has been available on Bitcoin, it's essentially NFTs and meme coins. Obviously, we're seeing a huge amount of functionality coming now, and like the explosion in growth right now is like I genuinely can't keep on top of it at the moment. But there was an obvious crossover, and also what we found, and other people in the industry had seen, was that there was a lot of Solana users that had actually taken the leap over to Runes and Ordinals, and whilst everyone else was focusing on kind of the EVM side, the Bitcoin L2s, and bridging between those ecosystems, we realized that this was such an obvious play in our heads. So we decided to kind of double down and focus on expanding Solana to Runes. And then as things have developed, and we were looking to kind of extend our bridge into Bitcoin L2s, it became obvious again that taking Runes to Bitcoin L2s is obviously really great and something that's really wanted, but actually expanding Solana assets over to the Bitcoin L2 ecosystem and potentially Runes themselves is also another super interesting avenue, and something we're kind of working on in the background. So from an early stage, we were looking at pups, and they, in some senses, they're part of the inspiration of why we've pushed so hard down this direction. So we're super gassed to be working with them, and providing a much needed functional bridging solution for these guys.
Dude, I fucking love it. Pups are just cooking, like the most unexpected group that just take over and just shit post the timeline. Really kind of this is a lot of people treat blockchains like a business, and I get it, but like normal business doesn't really apply here. If you really look at what we're doing, it's like a lot of shit coining, a lot of attention economy, a lot of memetics, a lot of new emerging kind of ways of interacting with currency, and people are like, well, let's bring all this. But these are the types of ideas that like take off because it's new, it speaks to the addressable market. It's not going to like normal tradfi guys and you're like, all right, check out this picture of this puppet. How much do you think this is worth? But yeah, also want to say GM to Robert, dude, the new node monk is looking super good on you, bro. How are you feeling with that thing on? Your confidence is probably peaking.
Honestly, I just like the blue, like mixing it up in the spaces here. I see we have Leo in the audience, another Node Monk advocate, and actually Gio Ibiza, G Ibiza in the chat there. I see you with the Node Monk. Obviously, Pups, Farmer Joe is rocking the puppet over here. Yeah, we got Solana in the audience. It's nice to see all these Bitcoin PFPs out here.
I will say, sir, the floor price on my honorary puppet, I believe, is 21 million Bitcoin. So yeah, it's really hard to compete.
Holy shit!
Damn, that's free.
Wow, free.
Yeah.
There's
My
actually a
wizard
few
at home
others
today,
that
unfortunately.
sorry, there's actually a few others that listed them at 21 million and one. Um, massive diamond hand community, I got to tell you.
Oh, I see UTX. I see Harry down there lurking with the MOG glasses too. I want to get some people up here today. I would love to get some sentiments as we start to roll into Fractal's, Unisat deal. I think I don't know, it's something that I think I'm getting pre-Rune Mine vibes again of just, and I just want to hear people's thoughts on it. And the fact that it's like 50% pre-mined by Unisat. I don't know, a lot of things that I don't see discussed. I see businessman in the crowd. He's been throwing out some proper takes as always. I know it upsets some people, but it's just sometimes the harsh reality people. But I would love to hear his takes on some of that.
Businessman's on
But yeah,
point. He put out a tweet today that maybe we could pin around all of the sort of pre-fractal projects being very scammy, and honestly 100%
yeah,
agree. And if we lean too far down the scam curve here and let these pre-fractal like mining projects dominate, I hate to say it, like that really could be harmful for the fractal ecosystem and the growth of like legitimate projects building on Fractal. So, anything, $1 million pre-sale for some Fractal scam, like honestly, stay clear of that, guys. There's good, like, if Fractal is the alpha, then there are going to be enough, like, free projects and cheap projects to participate in that will have upside. Don't cheat your bags on this garbage. Like, businessman on point. Would love to see him up here as well, though.
Yeah, no, 100.
let's get
I
him.
agree with you, man. I think this whole meta of pre tokens, pre ecosystem was actually started with pre runes to begin with. I haven't actually seen, well, outside of like NFTs that have airdrop rewards to maybe like the actual L2 token or L1 token, much like uh, the Bong Beras have an allocation towards the Bera token. This whole pre thing has actually, been a meta that originated on Bitcoin. And, much like we've seen with a lot of these pre runes, there's maybe two that succeed, maybe three, right? You have Runestone, which was, a pure play airdrop, pre rune NFT ordinal. Obviously lived on the same chain that the drop was on. You had, Rune Pups, which were, again, kind of a claim solution to a token, which was, expanding, in the pivot towards a rune. And then you had RSIC, which is another one, which was kind of a box miner solution to try and gamify the distribution. I actually don't think any other pre-rune was successful at all, and it sounds like they all kind of went to zero at this point, including the ordinal collections themselves. I suspect kind of similar things will happen, and some of these teams are raising like a substantial amount of money for these pre-fractal scams, let's call it. $1 million as like effectively a pre-sale for a token on Fractal. Kind of seems like we're entering this pre-sale meta, like a pre-sale to a pre-token meta on Bitcoin, which just attracts the wrong crowd at the end of the day. And like you said, Robert, it's quite harmful to the success of Fractal to begin with. Um, yeah, I mean things should be
Yeah,
organic
I
from the
think,
ground up, on
yeah,
any side
that's
chain.
what exactly. I think, you know, anything, I'm also seeing like the first pump.fun on Fractal. And it's like, dude, Fractal's not even live, first of all. And if people have to say the first, like, there's just a lot of, and that's what's cool about the Bitcoin community, or one of the things that I seem to love. And, it's not always true, but majority of the time it's true. It's like, there's accountability. Like, people will call stuff out, um, you know, and that's why we're all here. Like, Ordinals was an organic. People saw the value on building on it, but I don't know. I'm getting a little bit hesitant with Fractal and all the things that I'm starting to see. I do think there's going to be money to be made with the attention that switches over, but I am curious. Does anyone know how they're technically handling the bridge? Because it is it's a fork. Like, it's a Robert. Do you have any insight on that, or Runemon, or anyone? I am curious of like how getting over to Fractal is going to be for the users, and
So under the hood, my understanding is it is just it's a multi-sig, right? It's I mean, unless there's something I'm missing here, you're just depositing assets, then they're traded on the L2. So I mean, in a way, Fractal is just competing with Solana, and Farmer knows I have some spicy takes around the whole Solana.
let's hear it. Let's go. Let's go. I love, dude. Why not? Why people are too spicy? Is if you don't like spice on your food and you like just like plain rice, like this isn't the space for you.
So
Peanut
like
butter
I
is
like
spicy.
that Fractal is like Bitcoin adjacent. I do want to respect the builders that are using Bitcoin security model or the UTXO pattern or any of these things to be building. But ultimately, a lot of these L2s, from my perspective, are just ultimately competing with Solana, and a lot of them are just worse Solanas. But somehow like roll up in some way to like Bitcoin security model, or you're sort of what is it, side mining the fractal token, like alongside basically Bitcoin miners can participate. But from a UX perspective, what is it actually? It's just Solana but slower, right? Like and so as you can tell.
And it's still UTXO based. Like there's no programmability. I I see the narrative. They're like, hey, it's Bitcoin native, and that's what people really want, and the security level of it. But if Unisat already has 50% of, because I was super bullish when I first started reading on it. I was like, you know, this makes sense for the mindset, the narrative, people liking UTXO model. But the more I dig into it, it's like, are we just going to a Unisat chain that
Mhm.
essentially Binance is just funding? But yeah, Hover, you got a take on this?
Yeah, I'll just say that I love you. I love you guys. You really care about the technology, and I will want to hear if you guys think that what you are building on is the perfect technology. And can you imagine if you can like imagine building your own proof of work, what it will have be if you have no limitations? Thank you.
That is a great question. If there was no
I mean,
limitations,
imagine if you can
dude.
design your own blockchain without thinking about what is delusional or not. So say, okay, I want to run 1 block per second on proof of work, and it has to be fair launch and everything. If you can tell me what you want of a proof of work or a blockchain.
Oh man, that's a really tricky question. I
Yeah.
mean, the fact is, like, launching any sort of fair distribution model right now when this industry is, has been around since 2009 is very tricky. Quite simply because, people recognize that there is, substantial future value that may happen over time. And I think like we're never really going to have another distribution model like Bitcoin had, where there was quite a lot of FUD, there was just a lot of entry points, a lot of volatility. So from like a distribution perspective, as a pure play token, I think me and others in the audience actually just think that like the purest cryptocurrency is by default always going to be Bitcoin. Yeah, I don't think you can ever really accept the disrupt the actual underlying asset itself. But in terms of like a chain, I mean, if we're thinking about a chain for mass audience, it's got to have throughput, TPS. It's got to, for me, leverage the fact that you have this Bitcoin asset that
Yeah.
then can be utilized, and projects and teams building around that model to me are a lot more exciting than
Yeah.
maybe just a temporary playground for
Yeah.
degeneracy. So I mean, ultimately, I think Solana is a great ecosystem.
Yeah.
The SVM, parallel execution, and so forth. The whole monolithic approach. I mean, there's various views as to monolithic
Yeah.
versus non-monolithic, but I think if you look at like the technology advancement, most teams right now building, true L1 killers are looking at high throughput, and they're not looking at beating Ethereum. They're looking at beating Solana. And if you can't match Solana's throughput speed, architecture, and so forth, I mean, over the long course of time, you're in a tricky spot. So, I mean, I'm not like a Solana OG, but I've learned to appreciate Solana for what it's worth.
Yeah.
I think the Solana Foundation has been innovating what an L1 can look like for
Yeah.
retail broad adoption. And many people just said, oh, like, you can't necessarily have a sustainable blockchain if the fees are very low. But
Yeah.
Solana kind of disproves all of that is the fact. And I know Harry can probably agree to this is because he's like a scaling maxi and
Yeah.
low fee maxi as well. If you can provide people the ability to make transactions at a high velocity at a reasonable price, which is very cheap, then in that case, you will create fees that go back to your proof of stake network.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I love Bitcoin for what it's worth. I love Solana for what it enables from like a retail TPS perspective. But I still think like the gap between those two chains, both being L1s, is a pretty large gap. And maybe we bridge the gap between the two at some point. But there leaves a window of opportunity for those builders which are thinking about Solana as a great ecosystem and building very closely to Bitcoin, which is kind of what Arch is trying to enable over, I guess, a long run. And that's kind of what makes me excited about Matt's kind of future vision as someone who's been on the EVM, been on the SVM, and had the opportunity to build from scratch. And obviously liking Bitcoin as an asset, and maybe being a potential solution here over the long run to bridge that gap. Not creating your own L1 from scratch, but rather leveraging Bitcoin and the pros of Solana all in one place. I think that's obviously a powerful solution, and I'm obviously kind of
Very.
biased personally, and
Yeah.
kind of why I appreciate what they've been doing. But yeah, if you're building an L1 from scratch, the competition is not Ethereum. It's Solana and Monad and Mega ETH. Those are EVM parallel execution chains, and they're not trying to beat other Ethereum L2s. They're chasing the big gun, which is
Yeah.
Solana, and
Very
finding
well.
it hard to do so.
Yeah, very well said. I totally agree. But you talked a little about you came away from it, but you talk about Bitcoin being pure and you can't replicate it. Bitcoin actually has some philosophies that I want to see from a project that no project has ever tried to follow, because being there's no company, no face, like you can't make this every other cryptocurrency, and I really want to see it Bitcoin be running 1 block per second on proof of work. Like, could this be possible?
Uh, I mean, I have no idea if that would be possible, but I think
Mm.
philosophically speaking, moving Bitcoin into sub 10-minute block times is more of like a political and philosophical debate of maybe let's not change Bitcoin too drastically. And I really don't see a world where we start to change Bitcoin
Mm.
materially, because then it kind of changes the construct of
Yeah.
what Bitcoin as an asset has.
Except OpCat, right, Farmer? OpCat,
Yeah, I
let's
th-
go.
I th- I think that's the one that's maybe I would say less controversial. It doesn't really improve Bitcoin's scaling and speed and everything, but it allows Bitcoin to be more of like an operating system in some ways. And then it obviously helps the interoperability piece and
Yeah.
trustless bridging to other chains. But again, it's not bringing smart contracts to Bitcoin. Yeah, Solana Sweeper.
Yeah.
You have your hand up.
Yo, how we doing, guys? I hear we have something coming up at some point in the future. Some exciting stuff with the Rune Mine at some point. I don't know. And just to let everyone know, Rune Mine has a ordinal, and they're gonna have a token on Solana. So just get ready for that cross chain, cross chain maxi here. And the pre-sale for the ordinal is available. So if anyone wants to hit me up, it's only $150. But DYOR, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I really like what you said about Solana, because I feel the same way that, like, you're not competing with ETH when you make a new blockchain. You're competing with Solana. I feel like Solana is what a lot of people think about when they think about cryptocurrency. If you think about normies, while I'm talking to you, if I send you money, when I end the sentence, you should have the money in your account, and that's in your wallet, and that's what it is when it comes to Solana. When it's firing on all cylinders. I think that Solana as an L2 of Bitcoin is the narrative for this bull market coming. It's going to be really challenging to make another L2 that's better for from Bitcoin right now. Maybe with when Opcat comes with CAVM, but a lot of the L2s that I'm seeing are kind of bullshit. So I think I'd rather bet on the technical know-how of the Solana guys. Like you have some of the best engineers in the space there than with some like random team that is doing some sketchy stuff with, they're saying they have huge TVL, but the Bitcoin is still in the wallet of the person that's supposedly staking it. So I mean, they have full custody over it. There's some L2s that have said that, and completely turned off. Another thing I think we should all understand is, they can say they're Bitcoin native or whatever. To me, it's an L2 if you're not every transaction on that network is not a transaction on Bitcoin. Then it's an L2. Then it's not happening on Bitcoin. I think a lot of people need to understand that. They're saying, like, even with Opcat, what people are going to do, like with CAVM, it's not going to happen. Every transaction you do on that network, from my understanding, is not going to happen on Bitcoin. It's not going to form a Bitcoin transaction. That's an L2, or it's definitely not happening. It's not Bitcoin. So just keep that in mind when you hear people talking, because I know a lot of people like to talk shit and like, oh, it's Solana this, Solana that, multi-sig this, multi-sig that. But a lot of these are going to be operating on similar principles, and they just try to hide it. Like some are using nodes. They're going to be nodes on their network that are going to on like maybe another chain that are going to try to emulate whatever's happening on Bitcoin. And then you have the decentralization issue with that new network, right? So
Yeah.
there's no like easy solution to this, or they would have already done it. It's just great to see more development happening on Bitcoin, but I mean, I don't think we're gonna really see a real anytime in the near future where you can go and use Bitcoin as payment in a big adoption phase where people are going to Starbucks and paying in Bitcoin, and there's like 100,000 to 1 million people doing that a day. I just
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. If Bitcoin wants 10 blocks per second, it can be possible. And or if someone built a blockchain and it's running 10 blocks per second on proof of work, then it will be possible. But because Nakamoto consensus, it's hard because of Nakamoto consensus.
Yeah, I don't think you're gonna get them to change it. It's gonna take a lot longer than people are saying.
Yeah. But what if you actually build another blockchain from scratch with Nakamoto consensus and able to run 10 blocks per second on proof of work?
I don't think it's gonna matter because of decentralization.
That's called
Like
BSV.
people are just not gonna
Yeah,
wanna. It's
but
like Bitcoin has the community, right? You gotta understand.
yeah,
Bitcoin has the whales, the people that have been there from the beginning,
yeah,
and they're not gonna like. I mean, you could make that right, but like, first off, you're gonna try to make money on it, right? Like Fractal, 50% is going to mining, and 50% is going to whatever, right?
yeah,
So like with Bitcoin, it was I don't know what did Satoshi mine 5%, and then the rest, um, anyone else was mining. So
yeah. But
uh,
BSV is not 10 blocks per second, so I'm not talking about that.
There is some stuff that you can do to get like probabilistic finality without decreasing the block times, and it's basically a node policy where it's called like the first scene rule. So if you uh basically we all run nodes that like don't do RBF, and just the first time they see a transaction, that's like they're not going to change it. And if all the miners and like nodes kind of follow that policy, then you get this like, it's probabilistically final without having to wait or like having to decrease the block
Yeah,
times.
Wait, run that back. Run that back.
So so right now there's RBF, and that means you can like replace transactions that already have been broadcast. But if all the nodes, and specifically really just miners, decide to not do RBF, which is maybe not in their best interest because they get lower fees. But if no one does RBF, then you get finality without having a confirmation.
I see. Because
Because
there's no,
your
yeah,
TX can't be
because
Yeah.
replaced.
exactly. So once it's broadcasted, just it will get mined whenever, but it is submitted. There's no takesies, backsies. Therefore, it is going to
Yeah. In the
compile.
big block world, they call that zero conf, so zero confirmation, and you can kind of,
What a giga Chad in the big
But
block
there's
world.
a lot of problems with it in
Yeah.
practice, like building apps, because it's not always
Yeah.
the case.
Interesting. Well, GM Loop, welcome, and everyone. Let's get this popping. We got to cause some chaos on the timeline. Fractal versus Bells versus Solana versus I don't know what else, but GM Loop.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, Bunzi and Farm Joe. I don't know if we've ever met. So good to meet you guys. I am building on Bitcoin, and
Whoa, what you building there,
we're
Loopy?
building a private members club for the coolest people in sports. So our tagline is "So House for
Well,
Sports."
fuck, I'm not in, but
I'm in.
I played pretty good ping pong.
Okay.
Is there a ping pong category?
We're not really meant for specific sports, but more for like cool people that are building in sports, or front office or GMs, things like that. But we will embrace ping pong, and we will have clubhouses at some point, and we'll definitely have some pretty crazy ping pong tournaments. Did you see the the 67-year-old in the Olympics?
That was me.
I knew it was you. It sounded familiar. She was a Chinese.
No, I was the guy. I did the pole vaulting. I got disqualified. It
She
sucked, but
was an old Chinese woman, so you're good at masking your voice.
well, dude, I'm just a JPEG on the internet. I can take any form.
So I wanted to kind of bring up. So I think like this is a little bit more of a philosophical point about Bitcoin, but sometimes I kind of wonder like why try to make Bitcoin faster? Because I think the question is like it's pretty clear to me that the current crypto community does not care really about like true decentralization or the fact that Bitcoin is like quote unquote safer to use, or it's more decentralized, or the fact that it's proof of work, because there's so much so many transactions on Solana. So I think if people are building products that need high transactions, I think they're just going to choose Solana, and they don't really care about it's not proof of work. But I think for things, and I think the use case for Bitcoin is kind of becoming like digital gold. And so I think the question is like, all right, if the crypto community right now, Bitcoin is this digital gold, and it's actually better that it's slower. Because if it doesn't really matter. You don't need to trade it 1,000 times a second. And then over here on Solana, it's like, okay, this is like the DeFi, high transaction per second kind of deal, meme coins, building, whatever. So I think for me, it's like, why don't we just focus on what Bitcoin is good at, which is, like I think a private members club on Bitcoin is a perfect use case, because it's like, we don't want high turnover. We want the members to stay the members, and then it's also people feel Bitcoin is safer. Same with digital art. Like I think digital art is the perfect like place for Bitcoin. So sometimes I'm like, why is, and I don't even know if I fully agree with this. Is not a fully formed thought, but it's like, why even try to make Bitcoin faster? Why not just like dive into like, all right, let's like actually like come together and find a way to explain to the world that Bitcoin is great for digital art, and go find the best artists in the world to put art on Bitcoin. Like I think that's already happening, but I think there's a lot of focus, at least on the timeline, on like, oh, let's make like Bitcoin block time like 1 second. When it's like, why do that when we can actually use the proof of work as a feature, not a bug.
Yeah, I
Sure.
appreciate the zoomed out
Sure.
normie
We got
view.
bags. We got fungibles bags to take care of here.
No, but dude, our rune bags. But no, Loop, I agree with all of that. I think if we look at it for what it is, and from what a typical person would look at Bitcoin as, like that is the superb use case. Because yeah, like friction is a feature, not a bug. Let's look at LP pools on Ethereum. Like, because the contract's so complex, entering and exiting an LP position makes it quite cumbersome and expensive to do it. Therefore, people keep LP in longer. And I think the way you're thinking about it is how I think about it as well. But the real reason is the security level of Bitcoin. Because once you start sacrificing for high throughput and Solana, it is more centralized. And it, to me, the value proposition lies why this any of this is valuable in the first place is the trustlessness of the network. Otherwise, it's like, dude, we don't need any of this. So when you sacrifice 1% of decentralization for speed, I think you've lost 100% of the value prop. That's an extreme take. Like I don't, but I do think it's a healthy kind of way to wrap, at least the way I wrap my head around things. And it's like, I'm just like Farmer to some degree, but he said something super on point, was like I kind of faded Solana in the beginning, and now I've come to appreciate it. But to that point, like it's still, their network can still go down, but it is maturing. I don't know, but I do agree that memberships and things like that, it just feels real. And like, when are you going to go to Starbucks and pay in gold? Like, when are you going to go? Someone else said, like, how am I going to pay for something with a corner of my real estate building in downtown New York? Forget who said it, but it's it's a good way to put it. I don't think I said that correctly, but like, I think gold Bitcoin is always going to be the liquid asset that backs all of these different, ideas and concepts that we cook up in the DeFi world. Like, wrap Bitcoin is what stabilizes, stables to a large degree. And that's what makes USDC and a lot of these things possible, is like with wrap Bitcoin getting, pulled into those ecosystems. But Rune Mine, I'm on a tangent here.
Bunty, you're right
What are
though.
you
Really
thinking?
quick, sorry to cut in, but you are on point that like one day you will be able to go to Starbucks and pay with gold, aka Bitcoin, right? You'll bridge it trustlessly over to Solana, and you'll every time you buy
Yeah, it
something,
will be a synthetic though. It will be a paper dollar at that point
Yeah, but
that you could just.
having it come from and pegged to the Bitcoin network, like this is kind of like where we really see the value, where you have runes and you have like these most basic assets actually on the Bitcoin network and redeemable on the Bitcoin network at any point. But if you want to use them in any kind of high frequency environment, like Solana's just the obvious place for it. And having that combination of being able to have assets which are stored forever on the Bitcoin blockchain, like your ordinals and your runes, but then also being able to utilize them in other places, and probably Bitcoin L2s at some point. But for now, just obviously Solana in the short term and probably long term.
Yeah, I agree with you, Robert. But you can do it, but it's going to be in synthetic form, and it's the same concept. Is like, just because there's a representation on it on the other side of a network doesn't mean that's redeemable. That is the value proposition and the hope and the dream. But I mean, there is a lot of one-way
Isn't that
bridges.
what Opcat's
yeah,
gonna
Opcat
hopefully
fixes
deliver?
this.
Okay, fair enough. All
Opcat
right,
And
let's
fixes this,
BitVM.
explore.
Bunty.
Let's explore. Let's explore. Let's explore.
Yeah, I guess so. Opcat lets us go back and forth without permission. It's just you can at least that's what the Taproot wizards are telling me. So
But you're still gonna have to trust the next network.
So Bunty,
But,
think about it like this, right? Right now you can spend your Bitcoin, high fees, it costs, 10 cents or a dollar, whatever, depending on the fees to send your Bitcoin. Think of Solana with Opcat, so it's at least trustless and permissionless. Think of Solana as your hot wallet, the wallet that's in the back of your pocket to hold your Bitcoin that allows you to spend it at a Starbucks and, spend $5 of it at a time, and have the whole process be trustless, permissionless. Like, you can go to and from your wallet in the back of the pocket with ease, but you will be able to, I think, at some point, you're going to have a primitive on Solana where at the time of transaction, quickly swap your trustless Bitcoin into USDC and are paying your Starbucks bill, on the fly, right?
Yeah, so it's gonna be wrapped. So what I think it's Zeus, I believe, is working on Solana wrapped.
that's the one
Um
I've heard of is Zeus.
yeah, that shit's bullish. But you understand my point. I understand, like, I'm bullish and want this shit all to work, but at the same time, like, it is kind of LARP central until we get that, because um the
the promising part about what you said though is if that connection is truly seamless and doesn't run into any type of vulnerabilities from Bitcoin to Solana, Bitcoin to Ethereum, you know, I do believe Opcat. I do see 100% because I've been exploring this for quite some time, and there's still such a reliant piece on not only the other network but the piece connecting them, which is always the highest vulnerability part. But with concatenation and Opcat, I guess we can start testing it with Fractal. I mean, there's Opcat on BSV though. Like, why? Where's the proof?
We'll
So
also have
BSV,
VM, I believe BitVM testnet should be coming in the pretty near future, which, you know, to their argument is basically trustless. And then I think Opcat also adds to that as well. But, you know, the other interesting side of it is like your Bitcoin-backed stables, such as Hermetica and Bank, and having assets like that moving between different ecosystems could also be super interesting, you know, moving away from a US dollar backed asset that's actually still pegged to the US dollar. I think that adds a lot of value into kind of these environments.
I'm glad you brought up Hermetica because it is like the other side of this coin. Obviously, we're bull posting Solana to the max here, but you know we do still need some DeFi activity on the L1, right? And that's why Arch is here. That's why a lot of other builders in the space are actively building. Like, yes, do we need a high throughput L2 environment, which I put my bags on Solana personally versus Fractal where this is concerned. But like when I hold a Bitcoin address and I'm doing stuff with my Bitcoin on the L1, shifting in and out of USD and size or Hermetica, right? Whatever the future may hold there. Like we do need activity directly on the L1, right? And that is just the other side of this whole kind of discussion. Even though Solana is very bullish as an L2 for Bitcoin.
100% agree. I mean, like the Bitcoin does not survive without recurring fees that sustain the network over a long enough course of time. Whether that's transaction volume, whether that's on-chain MEV, which contributes to a substantial amount of fees for any network, not only exclusive to Ethereum but also on Solana. In many ways, a lot of people hate MEV, but it's been the value contributor and value driver to those who stake ETH and Sol to secure the network. And in the future, if you don't have any transaction volume, if Bitcoin is just a layer to store your Bitcoin, then quite frankly, the network does not sustain itself. I think that the broader vision for Bitcoin not only was an asset, but a functional ecosystem to a degree. I personally just think that Satoshi didn't necessarily want to envision 10-minute block times forever, but we're past that point in time where changing things on the base layer is maybe philosophically appropriate at size and scale. And there is no centralized entity, so to speak, to do so, unlike the ETH Foundation and other foundations like Solana Foundation and so forth to make these decisions. But yeah, I think in the future we'll likely have a payments layer, a trading layer, and so forth for high throughput activity. And right now, the highest throughput layer of any sort is that has consistently worked at scale, at size, with minimal, I would say, shutdowns in the alpha beta stage.
You're talking about SV,
It's
right?
Solana. No, so, I mean, these things are essential, right? Like, I think building more expressivity on the base layer is a net positive to ecosystem and for Bitcoin as a whole. And I think that's kind of why we're all very optimistic and pushing the boundaries of what's possible on the L1. Is the L1 on Bitcoin going to be the most used network in terms of transaction volumes? Absolutely not. But is it going to be a layer that has a very substantial and meaningful amount of value transacting? I think the answer should be yes, as the most secure, base layer and base asset.
You know what I love about all these or what I'm starting to think is like with two networks, we kind of go
into like checks and balances to some degree. Like if it's built in a very proper way, and for everything to check, I mean, it's kind of like the ZK proof approach, I guess. But let's go to Loop. He's had his hand up, and anyone else that wants to pop up has some takes. Love to hear them because we're about to enter a very interesting September, October section with some of these new techs emerging. So
Maybe today, man.
uh,
Maybe it might be an interesting day today, Bunsy. I don't know. I don't know.
Who would know?
wait,
It could be very
what do you
interesting.
mean? Wait, dude, I'm a co-host. That's really important.
Hey, Bunzy,
So
it could be really interesting.
wait, what?
Can be
I
big.
don't like this, dude.
All right,
Wait,
Loop.
why do you guys all know something that I
Loop, you had
don't?
your hand up. What's
What the
going on?
fuck?
Oh, we got some alpha coming. Yeah, all right. This is gonna sound like a bearish take, but I swear it's not. I mean, like, does anyone else feel like anybody who's been here for like multiple bull cycles, like this bull cycle is so fucking weird. Like it is so different than the last.
Because it's not a bull cycle.
I mean, it's like it's weird. It's like kind of like we're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, right? And prices were going up, and but no one was really being onboarded, right? It was like I think we had in 2017 it was kind of like the ICO craze that onboarded a lot of people. 2021 it was like NFTs, and now we don't really have like any mass onboarder who's like, oh, I'm coming in. It's maybe meme coins, but I think it's just not really working as like a mass onboarder. So we're kind of in this weird spot where it's like, all right, prices were going up. Now we've been going sideways all summer, and no one's really joining the space. And I think what's odd about that is like the people in crypto right now, like in every industry, you're supposed to market to your early adopters. So like marketing to people on the stage, or in the audience right now. But I think what's weird about crypto right now is because it's not growing, you don't have a lot of like normies that are like drinking the Kool-Aid. Like everyone's kind of like like unfazed at almost anything. And pretty much the only thing that's winning right now is like Max Ponzi. Like, if you look at like Blast was like it was like 6 months of like, oh, we're in a bull cycle, but it was pretty much just like Max Ponzi. Like that was the whole goal, was like, all right, we bring one small innovation, which is like native yield, and no one really gave a shit about that. And it was like everybody's like, oh, just Ponzi. And now I think like what's odd is like if you're building a real product that's not Max Ponzi, no one really is going to drink the Kool Aid unless you're like going individual to person to person, right? So it's really hard to like kind of build a new audience, or get people really excited about something that's not like a meme coin gambling or Max Ponzi. So I kind of feel like the move right now is like gearing everything towards like non-crypto people. And I think like when, kind of bringing it back to Bitcoin, I think people in the world, they're kind of viewing Bitcoin as a commodity. So like, I think, and I don't think that really looks, or it doesn't really represent itself as like a payment. It's more of like a long-term investment. And I think for like wrapped Bitcoin, I'm like, why even have wrapped Bitcoin? Like, why not just have Solana? Because
Whoa, dude, wrap Bitcoin is all right. I'll let you
I
continue.
was
I
I was
somewhat
gonna
agree
say
though. Like, what is the point of bridging?
like it's like if I'm buying Bitcoin, I'm probably not buying it because I want to buy my morning coffee with it. I'm buying it because I
All
want
right,
protection against inflation, kind of basically a countrywide monetary policy, right?
dude, do you realize Bitcoin's not traded on Bitcoin? Like that
Wait,
is
what?
so when you hold Bitcoin is not traded on Bitcoin. You need different financial assets like wrap Bitcoin, like exchanges, all of these things. So if you don't have wrap Bitcoin, you would not have nearly the same price discovery, anything. So let's roll back no wrap Bitcoin thought because
Well,
that's just not
meaning
it.
like wrap Bitcoin is better for price to go up.
No,
also
wrap Bitcoin.
also
uh,
the I understand the point that he's making, and I was starting to agree with it until the end. But like, first of all, infrastructure doesn't bring new users in. Consumer applications do, and use Blast as an example. Like for the most part, Blast didn't bring or didn't create excitement around the ecosystem. It was like Fantasy Top, those types of apps, these degen Ponzi applications that brought in the users. There was an element of staking and locking your funds into Blast for some period of time, but all of the degen farming was happening around the consumer application. So, and unfortunately, over the last like 6 to 8 months, the majority of the venture-backed projects that have been brought to market is all infrastructure related. There's like ADL2s, you have interoperability protocols, messaging protocols, data availability layers, all these different things. And that's not what's going to bring in users to make their dormant Bitcoin be all of a sudden usable. And also another problem why there's not a lot of builders happening is because we're too focused on seeing what's going to be possible when XYZ gets unlocked, when BSV fork gets unlocked, when Opcat gets unlocked, when BitVM gets unlocked, what's all of a sudden going to be possible, but there's no consumer applications that are building on the layer one today that we're focusing on in this conversation. Like DotSwap, for example, is bringing the first AMM type of experience to DeFi. That's an improvement. The more types of improvements that we can bring as far as user experience and also applications that can create more utility around this dormant liquidity, that's what's going to bring the users that are holding these Bitcoins that are doing literally nothing. And those people don't go to Solana or don't go to Ethereum because they're not interested in those ecosystems, right? They're just interested in holding this digital store of value. And then eventually there will be places where they can use those Bitcoin and then they'll be drawn in. But until we do that, like, we're just talking around a circle here saying like what's going to be possible, which chain's going to win, when, trust minimized bridging, trustless bridging, all this stuff. Like, who's going to build something that's going to actually get assets transferred around from wallet to wallet, you know, doing swaps or prediction markets or whatever. You know, that's what I want to focus on. I want to focus on builders who are building the next iteration of food farming platforms and, you know, degen protocols, ohm fork, this, that, the other. That's why Ethereum became what it was because there was a lot of stuff to do. Right now, there's nothing to do. Like Bunzi said, there's no place other than centralized exchanges where you could actually trade Bitcoin. What can you do with it? You can just send it to somebody. That's it. Input in, output out, whatever. You
I
know,
guess
but
Matt,
sooner
full,
or later,
full
there's
chain was an
nothing to
argument
do.
there.
There's nothing to do on the L1, Matt, because Arch is not on mainnet yet. So when
that's
mainnet?
definitely true, for sure. Pretty soon. I mean, we'll big incentivized testnet first. You know, like what Farmer said before is like there does not exist any like body that can incentivize or give projects the resources they need to scale or build without raising venture. Like, so we can't skip the step
Well,
of
Ordinals did it. Ordinals is just a protocol.
that's true. So what's your point by that? Saying
Ordinals
Ordinals
is
was
that?
also the first real push for development on Bitcoin in a very long time on layer one Bitcoin.
no. My point by that is like when something works
But
and there's true value derived from it. Like I'm kind of like it reinforcing what you're saying. Like fees, like funding is a good thing too. All I'm saying is when something works, the incentive model is there because what we see with Blast and these other things is there is this pipe dream and pie in the sky numbers, and when everyone's fucking hung over off the strange high that they got from thinking about stuff and the dust settles, there's nothing there. So like networks like Arch, networks like these other things that if and when they bring the value that cements uh you know things working, aka ordinals, that was a value prop to Bitcoin, like that builders just came and used it because of the problem it was solving. That I am I explaining that right?
what wasn't Casey like? What was the ultimate reason why Casey was able to do what he did? Like, what wasn't he holding a ton of Bitcoin to begin with, and that ultimately enabled him to set up these nodes or something? Like, what was the ultimate like unlock for him that created that
I
moment?
don't know.
Like,
I mean, that'd be a good
He's an
question.
experimenter, right? Like he is just a long time Bitcoin dev and enthusiast. And I think just looked at everything going on with ETH, you know, all of the trading volumes around NFTs, and we're like, okay, like he's a bit he's a bit of an anarchist and wanted to bring some of that energy back to Bitcoin L1, right? Hence why ordinals, like ordinals as NFTs wasn't actually the first primitive that he launched. Ordinal theory was actually first, which is numbering all satoshis in existence, right? So you know, uncommon sats, block 9 sats, etc., right? Like this was the first thing that Casey was pioneering in late 2022. And then obviously that segued pretty quickly into, actually adding data and tying the data into these sats, and thus, NFTs on Bitcoin were born. So yeah, just for a bit of sort of history, he's just a Chad Bitcoin dev that, wanted to bring some degeneracy and bring a casino back to Bitcoin from ETH and other ecosystems.
I believe he coined it the intergalactic casino in his presentation in Hong Kong, related to runes specifically, but also, has applied to ordinals as well.
Dude, Intergalactic just makes me think of that Beastie Boy song.
So,
Pretty sick. I'm hyped now.
just to get back to Matt's initial line of thinking here, or questions that he posed, let's talk about stuff on the L1, forking existing popular projects, or, bringing new ones into the fray. And I think that a lot of builders on the L1 feel the strain today of a lack of composability. The examples you highlighted, Matt, such as DotSwap bringing AMMs, I wouldn't consider that a massive amount of innovation on the L1. That's just adding a piece of centralization into the fray to accomplish an AMM. That's it's in a way sort of like a pseudo sex integration, just because now all the tokens are centralized and you can do a bit more with it through an AMM. But it's not exactly
no,
like,
let's
yeah.
actually take. I mean, let's back up to see what is the purpose of, you could say centralized, but what you mean is multi-sig, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so multi-sigs don't provide programmability, but they're a necessary component of programmability, because they basically take an instruction set and they basically ultimately facilitate the instructions and transfer the assets around to the respective person. So the taker on the DEX, the swapper, the person that's going up to the source of liquidity and saying, I want to swap using a PSBT and I can trade against that liquidity, that is not centralized. That is a trustless swap, number one. Number two, what the ways that multi-sigs can be effectively decentralized over time using threshold signature signing, like how Arch enables it, that ultimately does give a DEX true AMM type of experience. So yes, DotSwap today is using a centralized multi-sig that they use UTXO management and different liquidity providers that are comfortable with the risks associated with providing liquidity to a centralized multi-sig. But over time, utilizing platforms such as Arch, you can decentralize and spread out that risk, where you're no longer trusting DotSwap, you're trusting Luga nodes, you're trusting Blockdaemon, you're trusting Figment, you're trusting Kiln, who are operating on proof of stake and have no incentive to maliciously act in any type of way with those multi-sig funds. That is programmability on the base layer, and that is a DEX, and that will provide value to your runes bags at the end of the day. And we need to first get there with the infrastructure that is needed to get there. And yeah, DotSwap is currently centralized with their thing, but eventually they will move to Arch and use TSS network that is operating on proof of stake. And then at that point, you're good, you're secure. It's the same trust assumptions from the liquidity provider, the maker, as let's say a Stacks with a signer network and things of that nature. There are certain trust assumptions that the maker is making, but the taker makes none. And that's a value add. And that's definitely not a sex either.
Yeah, I mean, the other part, Matt, to note is the AMM logic as a smart contract. I don't believe DotSwap has a VM, right? So the additional unlock for someone like Arch and others is that you have a VM, and that you can, I guess, have these smart contracts rather than some centralized API logic, which is obviously another layer of risk that I think a lot of people aren't necessarily thinking about at this point in time.
Yeah, I think everyone's getting too lost in this word, multi-sig or bridging and things of that nature. And I think maybe what would clear it up is calling it something different, or the ability to send funds to a smart contract while still self-custodying your assets, that is a net new thing for Bitcoin. Because in literally all other contexts, whether you're talking about a meta protocol like OpNet or Proto-Runes or Glitter or anything like that, or a layer 2 like Stacks, Merlin, Bob, Botanics, Citrea, anything else, the very first step that you do is you bridge or you wrap. You cannot call a smart contract, or you cannot send funds to a smart contract without doing one of those two actions first. And same thing goes for the taker as well. The taker has to first bridge or wrap his assets into the network so that they can then send funds to the smart contract as a taker. And in this particular case, and in the case of Arch on a layer 1, that is not how it works. You are not bridging, locking your funds, minting something new on a destination chain. Although you are trusting a multi-sig on the layer 1, it's still the exact same assets that ultimately are secured by the Verifier network, but there is no step of bridging first for either the maker or the taker by giving up their funds first and then calling smart contracts second. So we think that the elimination of that first most scary and most vulnerable position, being bridging your assets to do anything first, eliminating that step is pretty compelling when it comes to the takers who do not want to make further additional trust assumptions.
Yeah, no.
Who want to self-custody their assets.
Yep. No, 100% agree. I mean, I think a lot of people here, as simple as it is, we still don't necessarily have feature equivalency in terms of what's possible on the L1 to other chains. I mean, the primitives for any chain are very simple. You have, a lending market, you have, a swap AMM, and those two combined plus a stable coin allow you to at least have the fundamental pillars of any sort of ecosystem. And Bitcoin sure has stable runes, but the problem is you can't really do anything with them at this point in time other than go in and out of Bitcoin, to basically long short and trade directly on the L1, which is to some people still a value add, but from the broader user's perspective of holding these assets beyond just Bitcoin, that certainly is not enough. So I think it's obviously going to be a very exciting next 3, 4, 6 months in the Bitcoin sphere, because I think I know Luke kind of brought it up. This cycle we haven't necessarily had an unlock of net new users outside of meme coins, and a lot of the value capture has for the assets themselves to swallow in value has largely come from ETFs and institutions and general retail parties that don't use Web3 ecosystems and environments, don't use I would say the software that's built on any sort of layer. But then once you have that ability to do all of that on Bitcoin, I think it's still, it doesn't necessarily expand the pie, but it certainly expands Bitcoin's pie and starts to capture some of the Ethereum users, some of the other chains which are in my opinion like ghost chains like like Cardano and XRP. Um, Still massive bulls in each of those ecosystems for some odd reason, but again, like bringing people back to Bitcoin in this slower environment, be it 10-minute block times as the initial restriction, I still think that's a massive value unlock for anything on the L1. And then thereafter, what happens at a macro level, like how does Web3 really grow in the adoption state of bringing people over to the Web3 ecosystem? I think largely that's going to come from opportunities, and growth opportunities. Like Ordinal's brought in maybe some people to the ecosystem that weren't necessarily NFT traders, myself included. I've never touched a ETH NFT. I mean, I bought some, but I wasn't a trader per se. But I think the L1 unlock will bring people that maybe have never used EVM environments and are coming to Bitcoin for the first time. And you think about all the people that just hold Bitcoin, they might experiment and be curious as to like what's going to be happening on the L1. and they are so L1 driven and focused that they're not going to leave the L1 for all these reasons. And for those that do want to leave for broader expressivity, speed, throughput, certainly there's Solana, there's other Bitcoin L2s popping up, and maybe those capture an audience and a use case around them. But yeah, that's kind of like my take is we haven't necessarily reached feature equivalency on the L1 itself. This brings and unlocks Bitcoin holders, which there's millions of them, and I think from like a daily active user perspective, I believe Bitcoin was at 2.8 million and Ethereum was 1.8. So from like a daily active user perspective, there are more users just right now on Bitcoin, ordinals and runes aside. There's certainly not 2.8 million people, 2.8 million daily wallets that are transacting on the L1. But who should L1 builders be targeting in terms of giving them net new opportunities? It's the Bitcoin holders, in my opinion, because that is ultimately $1 trillion plus TVL unlock, and that's massive. Anyone who's been around on the ETH side knows that a lot of these projects, protocols, tokens, and so forth, there's this like optics valuation perspective of how much TVL you have or a multiple of your TVL. And to me, the unlock of that capturing the TVL from L1 Bitcoin holders and not Web3 users can be substantial enough to, make the things on Bitcoin L1 be worth substantial amounts, such that it brings in people maybe that hold the ETF and maybe Bitcoin in a Coinbase account to say, hey, like I'm gonna bridge over or not bridge over, but I'm gonna transfer my Bitcoin from my Coinbase address to an Xverse wallet and start playing around with this, and maybe it's $100, maybe it's $1,000, whatever it is, but I think that brings an influx of user activity, and brings back the opportunities for those playing around on the L1 successfully to capture those opportunities. So I mean, it's fun and cute to have these side ecosystems and playgrounds that bring, that let the degens have some fun for a short amount of time and value capture from the opportunity that presents itself. But over a long enough duration of time, I think the biggest opportunities will always and consistently remain on Bitcoin as long as we have, feature unlocks and programmability unlocks.
Bullish. I wanna hear from Harry if he's still around. So notice he's still a speaker.
Yep. Recently I been exploring Solana a bit more. That's kind of why I jumped on here. You guys were all talking about Solana, and I've really been like a UTXO programmer for 5 years now, and never really kind of experimented with all those ecosystems. But yeah, I built like a demo app. It's called PumpDat, and the composability of Solana really impressed me. And it's effectively I just like integrated with the Pump Fund smart contracts. Like I didn't write any of my own smart contracts. I'm just like executing theirs. And we made like a simple website to turn any tweet. It like takes a screenshot of a tweet and then makes a meme coin out of it. And that was like a 2-day, quick little hack project just to kind of get myself more familiar with, DeFi, smart contracts, all this new stuff. So yeah, I've just been like really impressed with Solana and just like trying to upskill over there just because I see that as, such a massive ecosystem. Um, I like building consumer apps instead of like all the infrastructure. And unfortunately, when it comes to, UTXO programming, there's a lot of infrastructure you have to build yourself that's in like kind of gate kept. You just have to learn it yourself and learn how to do it all. So you spend way more time not focusing on your consumer app side of the stack. So for that reason, like Solana has been very interesting. I'm definitely exploring Arch and OpNet and all this BTC stuff, but it's not like live yet. So I'm really just staying cozy and just trying to learn more, get more skills, and just kind of see what happens next.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
no.
good takes. People love the Solana side. I'm glad to hear you're degenning there. But you touched briefly on the OpNet, Arch, like, and as you noted, like none of these are mainnet ready at this stage, like very much testnet testing at this stage. But like, is there anything you're excited to jump in, like when these layers or when this tech hits mainnet, like anything you're excited to build, like any low hanging fruit that you're seeing?
Not quite. I'll probably be a participator in these networks early on just to try them out and like see what other people are making. But I just feel like I've been burned by like running 100 different indexers from ordinals that like didn't work out or whatever, like just from all these different Git books. And there's just been so many things that have like popped up that didn't quite work out. So I'm kind of like, while I'm usually early to a lot of stuff, I'm kind of just sitting back and paying attention, like seeing what's good. So I want to participate in every Arch app, every OpNet app, see what's up, and Solana stuff too. Like I'm definitely spending a lot of
I
time
mean, there's obviously a lot of
over there.
learnings that you can take from that too. Like ecosystems with a lot of users tend to have very quick feedback loops, and I'm sure as like a founder or a project builder, feedback loops from early adopters make your product just that much better. And if you're missing that, then oftentimes you can spend 6 months to a year just building something that no one will use. And the faster feedback loops obviously lead to more successful innovation or product market fit and so forth. But yeah, it's interesting that you're obviously kind of aware and curious. So kind of looking forward to what your next adventure is, wherever that is. Be it Solana, be it back on Bitcoin L1 at some point, be it some of these more alternative meta protocols and so forth. I think the world needs more more UTXO interns. um,
Totally.
it would be
Yeah, and hopefully all these new stuff, like especially Arch, can enable that. Like if we're able to write code and it can just like execute and live on, and I don't have to like run it and manage it, that's really when we talk about smart contracts, that's really what is appealing. It's like you can create this thing, but you don't have to like run your own server, like do all this infrastructure stuff. You can just like, to me, I compare it to like making a movie. You like, write a script and like produce it and like direct it. You make a movie, you publish it, and then it's out there. And that's kind of what the vision of smart contracts can offer. So I'm looking for anything to be able to like create a lot of movies, whether that's Arch, Solana, whatever it
Yeah, I
is.
mean, 100% agree with you. Like devs just want a dev, right? They don't want to be running servers, websites, backend, indexers, and all that jazz that overcomplicates, the upkeep, especially as you have another version or indexing that has changed and so forth. Like we've seen this to be the case with, BRC20 in a lot of ways, where Casey or not Casey, but you had to like update your ORD client, and then the latest ORD client didn't support the latest BRC20 indexing, and then you had to run an older ORD version.
Mm-hmm. Put it this way, I'm on my 5th BRC20 indexer right now, and not a single one of them is from Unisat, the largest leader of BRC20s.
Come to Runes then. So much simpler.
I mean, yeah, that's why I'm so happy about Runes, is because there's one really good indexer made by Giga Chad Casey. That's
Well,
like the
sir,
best part about
you
Runes.
don't have to run a node. You don't have to run an indexer. You can just call an RPC endpoint or possibly even use a TypeScript SDK and build a front end pretty
Yeah,
easily. And feel
I
free to
mean,
keep getting cozy with the Solana smart contracts, because pretty soon you'll be able to just fork one of those and will be immediately applicable inside of Arch.
I think that's one of the benefits
Whoa,
of Arch.
roller.
It's like you could clearly tell that you guys have been Solana enjoyers just because of the way it's like architected in the dev style of Arch. Like really was aligned with Solana.
Yeah, no, Harry, appreciate all it takes from like a developer perspective. I think no one in this space or very few people have had so many reps and lifts in the Bitcoin building category. UTXO based blockchains are your bread and butter, starting from BSV, then going to ordinals, building ordinals wallet from scratch, everything from the ground up. Yeah, I guess on the topic of Ordinal's wallet, anything that you can kind of share with us that's kind of coming up, and anything curious there that the team is looking patiently towards, or any alpha that you can share on the Ordinals wallet side. I think a lot of people missed the vibes that you guys brought early to the table.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely slowed down a bit with the updates, but we have, new UI coming. I think Magic Eden's done well with some of this rune trading UI, so we're just trying to kind of copy it and iterate upon that, kind of push it as far as we can go. We're doing pretty well on Bell's coin right now. That was a coin we picked up pretty early on. So that one's been blowing up recently with all this merge mining, and it's kind of, some people are saying it's a fractal competitor. But other than that, no, we're really just letting it operate. I don't spend too much time on it. It's really just making sure everything's stable and good, and then really just like looking for new opportunities, whether that's in ordinals, like with more creators, or really just anything. So
Yeah,
the market's very boring right
yeah.
now, if I gotta be honest. So
It feels like it's been a bit of a boring market all summer, really, which to most people that have been around since January, February of last year, when it really hits, it hits pretty damn hard, and you got to be full tilt for a couple months on end with limited amount of sleep to really keep up with you know uh, with
mm-hmm.
you as like a trader, or someone just deving and building. There's just a lot of activity that happens, and yeah, in those times you wish that you just had a bit of a cool down period to get yourself ready for it. And I think we're coming up on, I would say, that inflection point. Whether it's later this year, whether it's next month. I think Bitcoin price determines quite a lot of things as well, and the amount of network activity in Web3 is really dependent on the macro for crypto itself, oftentimes. But yeah, I think it's going to be an interesting kind of forward 6 months, and I'm looking for. I guess I'm kind of ready to have limited sleep, and I'm still in the trenches, but there's just less to think about at this point in time, from like an active opportunities perspective. But this is kind
Yep.
of.
My signal's typically the mempool. It's like you don't need to look at X, you don't need to look at other stuff. It's really the mempool, and the blockchain is going to tell you what's going on. So when the mempool fees spike, you see what's going on, and that's the alpha. So you kind of just have to wait for
Yeah,
that.
and I mean it's a testament to how crushed and how little is really going on the L1 right now. The mempool has been sitting at 3 sats, 4 sats, sometimes even 2 sats per VByte for the last what feels like 2 months, maybe pushing three to some degree. But yeah, I mean, we know the fee rates themselves when there's network activity spike to 20, 40, 60, and so forth.
I mean, it's interesting. You had this Bitcoin L2 launch, and basically it's advertising. They did like 2 million in fees when they launched. What was it? Babylon. They launched, and the fees went up astronomically. I think up to like 1,700 was what I saw. So I think once all these L2s launch, man, you may see these fees go up. And like, let's say we have 10 L2s running and they're all $1 billion and they're getting a good bit of transactions. Maybe it's going to get much more expensive to operate on Bitcoin right now. If anyone ever said they want to do art on Bitcoin, now's the time. I don't
Yeah,
know how
no,
much lower it can go.
yeah, that's really true. I mean, if you want to inscribe something, there's never been a better time, because it's pennies on the dollar, probably 10x cheaper than it will be over the next coming months or so, or possibly even years. There might never really be an opportunity to bring data to Bitcoin in any capacity at these fee rates again. So, if people are ready, there's no better time to do it right now. Like Mempool TA says that we're all time bottom. So there's no lower that we can go. Like like fee rates are not going to go to 1 sat for VByte.
Sub Satoshi,
Yeah, exactly.
0.01
So,
cents.
dude, he's gonna start paying you.
Guys, we're gonna start to wrap up the space. So, if anyone else has a question, happy to have you up here. Otherwise, I guess we're kind of ending on time for everybody that joined. Obviously, appreciate you guys coming up. A lot of today's show was about Solana versus Fractal and other L2s, and I thought that was a good conversation point. Appreciate all the takes from everyone, especially Rune Mine and Sweeper as well, which are Giga Chads on Sol.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for having us, and look forward to some exciting work coming.
Yeah, it's gonna be a fun few weeks or days or hours. I don't know. It's gonna be
Yeah,
fun.
yeah, we'll see what happens. But yeah, lots to be excited for. Bunzi, with that, let's wrap up the show.
Thanks for coming by. We'll see you on Thursday. What time are we doing on Thursday? Same time, I think.
Same time as today.
What else,
Same
bro?
time.
Same time.
Let's get it. Hop off a 16 passenger. This a G5, no, this not a challenger. Big one. I keep some members with me in the fridge. The cold seats, they some cannibals. They like to geek. Drink a whole bottle, wake up and repeat. She took a look, make the quick up, chill out. Now she say she saying 3D. I go in the jungle and they got a coat. I bet I come out with a mean. I bet I do this shit for the fans.